Heavens Above now on BBC One, The Sky at Night in its 50th year.
Good evening, and first of all, a very happy New Year. This is not only our first programme of 2007, also the 650th Sky at Night, going back a long way. And today we have a very special guest. But first of all, our newsnets. Chris, good evening. Chris, something very interesting from Mars. The first evidence from Mars Global Surveyor of recent running water.
That's right. Mars Global Surveyor entered orbit around Mars back in the mid-90s, and it operated for about 10 years. We only lost contact with it a few months ago. And because it was there for that decade, we can compare changes on the surface. And if you look at channels like these, we can see that there have been recent deposits of what looks like a bright deposit, perhaps salt left behind by running material. The question is, what liquid was this?
Water, I think.
Well, possibly. Water can exist only for a short time on the surface, but it's possible that maybe some ice from under the surface found its way up. The water ran, created this channel before evaporating, boiling off into the atmosphere.
There may be a lot of water, liquid water, underneath the crust.
And still coming up onto the surface, at least occasionally now.
And something else on Mars, the discovery of impact craters below the smooth northern plains. This comes from the European Mars Express.
Absolutely. It's an instrument called MARSIS, which is a radar, and for the first time we can use this instrument to look beneath the surface. Now, if you look at any globe of Mars or any picture of Mars, the south looks like a much more complicated place than the north. It's got lots of features, it's an old crust. But it was thought the smooth north was a very young surface,
yes.
And this contrast tells us something about the history of Mars. The problem is it's not true.
No.
When you look beneath these smooth plains using MARSIS, we discover a huge number of large impact basins, which means that the crust is old. There's been enough time for these craters to have formed, and then it's been smoothed over.
That really is a shock, frankly.
It is. It's something completely unexpected, and there's lots more to come from radar experiments around Mars. This is the beginning.
Let's go further out now. Saturn, the large satellite Titan, where we have now found mountains.
That's right. This is a Cassini flypast of Titan, and they've got very good at tuning their wavelengths to look through the dense orange haze of Titan's atmosphere and see features on the surface. And this was quite a surprise. We see a large mountain range, the ridge running from top to bottom in this picture. And we can see on the top there's some sort of bright deposit. Now, this could be snow. Obviously, it's not water.
No.
Titan has a hydrocarbon cycle with complicated molecules, not water. So it could be snow, or it could be telling us something about how these mountains formed. And we're really seeing the features which will tell us the history of Titan. How did it get to the world it is today?
At the moment, we just don't know. Chris, thank you very much. And now for our very special guest. Piers Sellers, British-born astronaut, who's been up in the International Space Station. And a few days ago, he came to see me. And I began by asking him how old he was when he first decided to become a spaceman.
When I was about 7 years old, Patrick.
So did I, but you maybe, I didn't.
Yeah, my dad explained to me about the Yuri Gagarin flight, how this man was flying around the world so fast. He saw a day and a night in an hour and a half.
I remember telling me that.
That excited me. I thought that was extraordinary that anybody could travel so fast and see something like that. And it just entranced me. And then I watched the lunar landings, helped by you and James, and that was tremendously exciting. I watched the whole business of the Apollo program and the landings on each landing on the moon, and I never lost the thrill. Always wanted to do it, and got lucky enough.
First of all, one of the standard questions. What the Earth look like from space?
It's extraordinary. It's blue, white, and it's so bright that it looks like it's glowing. It looks like it's neon. You can see the curvature of the Earth from horizon to horizon this way, but what's surprising is you can actually see the curvature going away from you, over the horizon like that. So it really does look like a ball tumbling through space.
The second standard question, what about zero gravity?
Zero gravity is immense fun. You would absolutely love it. It's like flying. It's a little annoying sometimes because you keep losing stuff. If you put anything down, it tends to float away.
What's it like living on the space station?
It's great. Inside it's really huge. If you can imagine a 747 aeroplane and you take all the seats out, that's about as big as it is inside, and it's like that. It's a long tube made up of an American segment at the front and the Russian segment at the back. The American segment is all white and black. It looks like a workplace, which is what it is. It's a laboratory and an airlock. And then when you get back to the Russian segment, that's the living quarters. It's more homely looking. We have pastel colors on the walls, and there's the galley down there and the sleeping quarters. So we have an office and we have a home base on the space station.
How many are on the space station with you?
Space station has a crew right now of 3 people. And when we visit on shuttle, obviously we bulge up to 9 or 10 people, depending. But starting in 2009, the crew of space station will go up to 6. And there will always be a couple of Americans, a couple of Russians, and then we have Japanese and European astronauts.
As you so rightly say, one of the most important points about it is international.
That's right. It's a human enterprise.
Yes.
I think this is man as the species pushing out into space rather than a single nationality. And that's good.
Well, you said that zero gravity is rather fun. How long were you in space? How long were you in space consecutively?
11 days the first time, 13 days the second time. And that's after, it takes a day or 2 to get used to it, for your body to settle down to being in orbit. The first day your back hurts because in 0G your back stretches out about an inch, and that really hurts. But you take some aspirin and that dies down, and after a day that settles down. And you can feel your stomach rise up a little bit. It's a bit like being in an elevator or a lift, which has dropped very suddenly. You can feel your stomach rise, and that sensation stays with you for about a day. And then the fun begins. You can fly down the length of the space station just using your fingertips. You can almost swim through the air. It's a most extraordinary feeling. It feels great.
You
would love it. You would absolutely love it.
I'm sure I would. But what about the day's routine?
Normally the day starts, you're trying to get some sleep in your sleeping bag, which is tied to a bulkhead or the ceiling. Some people sleep upside down. One person I know likes to sleep free float. He just floats around like this in the cabin. When a shuttle crew's visiting, it's pretty much an 18, 19-hour day to do all the work. So you get up at the crack of dawn, dawn in Houston, that is.
Yeah.
And they play some music that one of the crew has chosen or the crew's family has chosen. And then it's pretty much straight to work, eating a food bar, drinking water, and getting on with the work immediately. Either getting ready for a spacewalk or doing a lot of transfers of stuff from shuttle to station and back. In my case, that was usually preparing for a spacewalk or repairing suits for the next spacewalk. So you're working flat out pretty well every day when a shuttle's docked. But when the shuttle's not there, the station crew have a much more moderate routine of exercise, experiments, science for a 5.5, 6-day week.
What kind of experiments?
There's a whole lot of medical experiments, of course, to look at the effect of long-term zero gravity on humans. And there's been some combustion experiments looking how combustion works in 0G, protein crystal growth, a whole range of experiments that can only be done in 0G.
What about the food, incidentally?
The food is pretty good. I found it out that I like the Russian food better. It's in cans. They have a very good lamb hot pot and jellied eels and aspic, if you like that kind of thing.
I do.
There you go. The American food, it's mainly freeze-dried, so you have to add water, heat it up. Some of it's really good. Something happens to your taste buds in space. A lot of things seem to lose their taste, and you have to zap it up a little bit with some Tabasco sauce or something spicy to make it taste good.
What are your main memories?
I think it's spacewalking every time, because when you're looking out of a window on the shuttle or on the space station, it's a beautiful view, but you're still separated from the environment. But when you're spacewalking, you're in it. You're in space. And if you just lean forward into your helmet and look through the visor, you're not aware of anything around you. It feels like you're just floating above the planet all by yourself, as if, I'm talking to you right now. You're actually in the environment.
From the space station, you've done more spacewalks than anyone, haven't you?
That's right. Right now, as we sit here, I hold the record, which is 6 spacewalks and 42 hours of spacewalking outside the space station. But I think that record will be broken in a couple of months. So this is my very brief moment of glory.
When you first went out into space on a spacewalk, was it what you expected?
No. I got a huge surprise. When we've been training in the pool, the airlock is, the right side up, and the hatch is in the floor. So when you come out, you dive head first out of the hatch, and you expect to see, in the pool, of course, see dirty concrete about 10 feet below you, but in orbit, you expect to see the Earth below you, and you think that that's going to be down, and the space station will be above you. Well, the first time I came out of the hatch head first, I had this very, very strong illusion that I was coming up, and the Earth was like the sky, and the station was below me, and I was coming sort of up like through the turret of a tank or something. And then the whole thing flipped upside down again, and I had this illusion of the space station and the Earth exchanging places a couple of times. And after about a minute, the illusion went away, and I was never able to get it back. I was very disoriented.
In your first spacewalk, what were you actually doing?
We were putting a huge new piece onto space station and bringing it to life. So we had to put some electrical cables to connect it all up. We had to put a camera in place. We had to put a big new antenna in place. A lot of bolting and unbolting.
Is that difficult? With
It's
the
very
space
tiring.
gloves?
It's very tiring because the gloves are stiff and they resist movement. A lot of training helps, but you have to be, careful, patient to get the job done. You have to be careful because the suit weighs several hundred pounds. So when you start moving along, you're gliding along quite freely, but it takes some force to stop yourself. It's like moving on ice almost. You can just glide along, but you have inertia, so you've got to be careful. Your hands get a really good workout. You're working very hard with your hands all the time against the pressure of the suit.
How do you move around when you're spacewalking?
Fingertips. Just use your hands and crawl along the handrails. It's a great feeling. It's almost effortless to move around. And the other extraordinary thing is that you can move all around space and up, down, over, round, underneath. It's all equally easy to do that.
You haven't got a rail handy. Is there any way you can shift around?
We're not supposed to. We're supposed to just use the rails, and we do, and use your hands to get around. Well, there's another way, actually, a way that is very convenient. We have the big robotic arm. This is like a 65-foot long crane. And you could put a foot platform on the end of that, jump on the foot platform, and then talk to your friends inside, and they'll take you anywhere you want to go on the outside of space station. That's fun. It's like standing on pretty much something the size of a phone book, and you get taken around all the outside of space station. If you fall off, we have a wire that you can use to put yourself back, and also a little jetpack that'll bring you into station very slowly. But you shouldn't be using that unless you're in real trouble.
Has that ever happened?
People have fallen off and pulled themselves back in using the wires, and we have tested the jetpack, but no one's used the jetpack in anger.
I hate to bring this up. What about the dangers? I mean, always a danger of a meteorite hit.
Well, you know what? That's not the biggest danger. 60 to 70% of the risk in spaceflight is the launch.
Yes.
About 20% is the entry. So it's the first 50 miles and the last 50 miles is the most dangerous. When you're on orbit, a micrometeoroid strike is a risk.
Yes.
It's about 1 in 200 for the shuttle on a given flight. And we've seen impacts on the station. So when I'm spacewalking, I always try and get the other guy to stand in front of me. No, I don't.
What about radiation problems?
Radiation, normally it's equivalent to about 2 chest x-rays a day. All right, so you get a fair dose of radiation, but we haven't seen any ill effects from people being up there for 6 months.
And communication is no problem at all. You're in touch the whole
Almost
time.
continuous. We have almost continuous communications. Now we have an antenna that goes to the geostationary satellites, so we have really good communications just about all the time. And TV communication quite a lot of the time. So we're much better off than previous generations of space explorers.
Yes, indeed.
We really are. In fact, when I'm outside spacewalking, I have 3 TV cameras on my helmet, so my friends on the ground can see what I'm doing. And in a couple of cases, they've told me to go back and do something that I'd forgotten or hadn't done right. I've got people who actually can see what I'm doing and help me, and that's enormously good.
When you were out in space doing your spacewalks, were there any alarms?
Yes, I had a number of things happen that got my attention. Had a low oxygen warning in my suit. Little thing crops up and says, O2, you're down to 19 minutes. At that point, we were just getting ready to get in the airlock, so we didn't hurry, but I was motivated to get indoors fairly quickly. And just problems with working with equipment that wouldn't cooperate, but eventually you find a way around it, get a bigger hammer.
Anything you were asked to do that you really didn't want to do?
Come back inside. I guess at the end of the spacewalk, say, hey, time to pack up, come back inside. You always want to stay out there and
I bet
enjoy the view.
They've repaired the Hubble Space Telescope. You have plans to go there?
I'm afraid not. I would love to go, but the crew's already been selected and they're getting trained right now to go to Hubble. And they've got a very, very busy time of it. They'll be basically replacing all the worn out parts, the batteries and the gyros. And Hubble should hopefully be good for about a decade after that.
Now, we talked about the Earth from space. What about the sky from space?
The thing that really amazed me when I first went into space was how thin the atmosphere is. You look at the curve of the Earth and there's this really thin layer of air that you can see, you know, the blue layer of air above it. And when you look carefully, you can see that the thunderstorms go halfway up the atmosphere that you can see from space. So there's almost no atmosphere at all. It's just like a little onion skin around the planet.
How much detail can you see?
Incredible. When I flew across the Atlantic, I could see little jets pushing across the Atlantic. I couldn't see the planes, but I could see their contrails, see ship wakes, cities. Unbelievable, beautiful, beautiful detail. It's like a model. Intricate and so beautiful.
Where are the stars?
Don't see them. You know what? During the daylight, you just don't see them. The sun is so bright.
Yep.
And you're just out there spacewalking, you have a black, black sky and a brilliant white sun. Just so brilliant it hurts your eyes unless you have your visor down. At night, we have the floodlights from, you know, the station and shuttle shining on the work site where you're working, and you also have helmet lights. So that's bright. And the only way you can see the stars really is to get to a dark corner of station out of the floodlights, turn off your helmet lights and look up. And I've done that, and all the stars come out, and it's just, they're very steady, of course, they don't twinkle, and it just looks like, you know, silver dust on a black cloth. It's just beautiful.
We've seen pictures of the space station in orbit, of course. Sort of, how much more will it extend?
Right now, it's about just shy of the halfway point. It'll be twice as big when it's finally finished. It'll be 500 tons, which is big.
What do you think are the most valuable results so far obtained from the space station?
Curiously enough, scientifically, there's not been much in the way of great science delivered from space station yet, and that shouldn't be a surprise. I think the greatest yield from space station up to now has been learning how to build large structures in space, how to make a survivable habitat in space that will work for a long time, and how well people stand up to living in space and working in space. It's all more difficult than it sounds. It really is a hard thing to do.
What's your forecast for the next few decades?
Well, I think what you'll be seeing is space station will go on till about 2020, and it'll be with a 6-person crew, and I expect to see a steady trickle of science and technology come down from space station. About 10 years from now, we'll have landings on the moon and construction of a small lunar base.
You say a lunar base. What do you envisage that being like?
Well, the current thinking is to have it down on the south pole of the moon, probably in Shackleton crater.
Yes.
And the reason for that is that you have some sunlight all the time when you're at the south pole of the moon, and that would be useful for powering solar arrays and keeping the temperature fairly even on the base. So the current plan is that we have these lunar landers that will go down, and every time they go down, they will leave some piece of structure and slowly start to build a lunar base.
Casting my mind back, I remember mapping that part of the moon and Crater Shackleton.
Really, what's it look like for real estate?
Well, I'd like to go there. Now looking further ahead still.
Hopefully about 15 years to 20 years from now, we'll see humans landing on Mars. And by that time, I would expect that the whole of the solar system would have been thoroughly explored by robot explorers and landers all over the solar system. The moons of Saturn and Jupiter, I would expect to see landers.
I wonder.
I think space exploration is the challenge for this generation and the next few generations. 500 years ago, Europeans had the oceans. That was the great unknown. And it didn't look like a very good prospect to explore the oceans at that time, but we did it anyway, and we have the Americas as a result, among other places. I think space exploration, we're in the very, very early stages. Space is our ocean now.
Piers, you've seen a lot, done a lot, and we've been very honoured to have you with us today. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Thank you very much, and the honour is all mine.
Well, that was Piers Sellers, British-born spaceman. We were honoured to have him with us. Now, don't forget, it's newsletter time. Send your stamped addressed envelope to Newsletter 104, The Sky at Night, BBC, Birmingham, B11RF. And when I come back next month, we'll be doing a special programme about Mars. Until then, good night.